so that you realize how important it is to continue working for peace and kindness throughout the world.
Yeah, no question. But after that harrowing experience, we had a delightful afternoon. We stopped at a chocolate factory, and we made our own chocolates. They gave us
I'm sure everybody remembers
yeah.
that.
And we have little plaques that we took home. We made cars and houses out of chocolate, and it was really good. They made the chocolate there, and then we made the actual desserts.
And what I remember is we made so much chocolate that they let us take it home with us, or on the in the van with us to the hotel. Well, chocolate melts in very hot weather. And so it was very interesting. By the time we got back to the hotel, we didn't have hard bars. We had liquid, mushy chocolate. But I think it all got eaten anyway.
What was nice about the van is that we were all together. Our baggage was there. We had a Palestinian driver, and we had Gary. So when we were tired, you could close your eyes as we were driving the highway. I know Jordana did that often, and I did that often. And it was nice to be able to be together in an air-conditioned van in a very hot country, and having all the comforts of being able to just go together. On our way back to the kibbutz, where we stayed a second night, we stopped at the oldest synagogue in the world. It's called Magdala. And we spent a lot of time there because it is not an operating, working synagogue. But they have found evidence of very, 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 very early synagogue procedures. It was just an incredibly warm feeling being in the oldest synagogue in the world.
I'm sure everybody felt that way as well.
And we got up the next day, which is a Tuesday, and that was kind of special too, because on our way to visit other sites, we stopped at the River Jordan, not only named after our son Jordan, but the River Jordan. On one side of the river, there was the Israelis right there at the river, and 20 feet away on the other side of the Jordan River, you can see the Jordanian soldiers waving and smiling at each other. There's no conflict there at all. But there is a gate in the center of the Jordan River that you're not supposed to go into each other's country. Well, we obviously went in the Jordan River. Some of us pretended to be baptized. Dan did the honors to a number of us in the Jordan River. It's muddy, very hot. I mean, the weather was very, very hot.
But very safe to do it. The Israeli, when Papa said that the Israelis were on one side, I mean, they were Israeli soldiers that were guarding that area, just as the Palestinian soldiers were guarding their side. But you could go into the water, which was in between the two areas. And I remember very well, I'm sure you do as well, all of you talking to these, there were 3 or 4 Israeli soldiers that were probably from the age of 18 to 22. So they were fairly young, both boys and girls. And I think that just speaking with them and realizing that they're real people, and they're taking and protecting, you know, all of us as tourists, and certainly the country itself. But they were very easy to talk to. They talked a little bit about their lives and their requirement to be in the Army for many times. It was most interesting.
And you got to remember that this is the land that Moses and Joshua and Jesus and John the Baptist, this is the land that they traveled. This is the ground they walked on. And that is an incredible experience. From there, we had a very exciting afternoon. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. Gosh, I mean, we all were just in awe because we went to Jericho. Jericho is a fabulous old city, one of the oldest cities on the earth. We went to Engaddi, and we, in fact, there were waterfalls in Engaddi. If you remember, we got put on our bathing suits and went into the water, under the waterfalls. We were not the only people there, so we had to take our turn. Uh, and it was cold, but it was coming down. The force of the water was pretty strong, if you remember. But we stood under that waterfall and took that shower. That was at Engaddi. Then the piece de resistance. After Engaddi, since we're already wet, we went to the oldest Dead Sea. We checked into the hotel. We stayed in a hotel at the Dead Sea. We stayed there one night. And we, in fact, had a family experience that was second to none. We changed into our bathing suits, and we, in fact, put mud. If you put it has a healing mud, and you put the healing mud all over your body, your face, your back.
It was yucky.
It was terrible. And there's pictures of that you'll see. And all of us did it.
Right. We did.
And you cover yourself with this mucky muck. And God, it must be 500 people or 1,000 people there. This is the lowest part on the earth. The lowest point on the earth. This is why the Dead Sea is dead. It's salty, very salty. And if you remember, you can't drown. In fact,
right, nothing lives in the Dead Sea.
Nothing lives in the Dead Sea. But you can't drown, you float. You are so buoyant because of the salt content.
So my memory came that all of you had known about the Dead Sea. So either your parents or you read about it, and all of you knew that you were going to float. But the difference between reading it in a book and trying to get down under the water once you're in there was really a very funny memory in my, my memory bank. You can't even try to, once you're lying down, you can't get up from that position. It's a real struggle to put your feet down on the bottom.
But you all did it. And you all did it beautifully. We took pictures next to a sign, the lowest place on the earth. And we spent the afternoon there. It was an absolutely wonderful experience.
It's a lot of fun.
Swimming in the Dead Sea. Oh boy, I'd say it was incredible. From there, we checked into our hotel, the Engaddi Hotel at the Dead Sea. We spent the evening there, and we had dinner, I believe, at the hotel. The next day was Wednesday. That was the 24th of July, and that too, every day was filled with another adventure. It just turned out just beautifully. This day we went to Masada. Now, this is the second time some of us, this is Stephanie, Jason, and Dan, and Graham and I went to Masada before. We went to Masada before they had the cable car. This time we took the cable car, took us to the top of Masada. And wow.
But even the cable car was an experience, especially if you've not been on a cable car before, because it goes straight up and you could see these incredible views, and you could think about during the time where they were at war with each other, that people could see what was going on all around Masada.
This is where a very small band of Jews held off hundreds of Romans that wanted to capture the Jews. And eventually all the Jews did die. They defended that mountain for years. And so Masada has tremendous meaning in the country. We walked the entire area, as Gary explained how they got their water, how they lived, what their houses looked like. Pieces of houses were still there. So you really got the feeling of what Masada is and what the Jews could possibly do to save themselves. In the end, they didn't, but after a very, very long period of time, they have defended the Mount Masada.
So definitely a lesson learned is defend what you believe in.
Oh, and they did, and they did. That was a very, very, very full day. Masada was in the morning, but we left Masada and we drove to Jerusalem. It was a heck of a ride. Just looking out the window at the changing scenery from Mount Masada into Jerusalem. We stopped at Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives is a higher area overlooking Jerusalem that has olive trees and has thousands and thousands of graves. Those are graves of Jews who want to go to heaven through Jerusalem. So Gary explained to us the rituals of the buried. And from Mount Olive, you could see the Dome of the Rock, you could see the old city. We drove into Jerusalem to an archaeological park. So you can see parts of what Jerusalem really is. And we went for the first time in the afternoon on Wednesday the 24th on the Western Wall tour. We didn't go underneath the Western Wall. I mean, there is a tour underneath the Western Wall because it is deep down. The Western Wall is the building, a wall from the building of the Second Temple. The first temple that was built there was built by Solomon. The second temple that was built there, which is what the wall represents, was built by Herod. And the history of the two walls and its meaning to the Jewish people. If you recall, we went back to the Western Wall, which we'll talk about in a minute, and that's where you put pieces of paper with your prayers in little cracks in the wall, in the belief that that God knows each one of those prayers that goes into the crack. And there are people praying there 24/7. We did as well. But we went on a different tour. We went on a tour of a tunnel, which was across the street from our Palestinian driver's uncle's home. So Grandma and I stayed in the home, in the garden of the home, while you all went on this tour. The tour was through a tunnel under the city, filled with water and darkness and narrow, where you had to bend down to get through. And Gary wanted you to see what some of the tunnels were like in the old city. That night, we checked into our hotel in Jerusalem.